Hello and welcome to Maximum Disc, a show where I celebrate physical media and talk about films that I own on Blu Ray and 4K Blu Ray. I'm James Adamson, I'm a co-host on the Double Reel Film Podcast. If you like this chat about physical media, please do check out Double Reel. It's a monthly magazine-style podcast made by people who love movies as much as you do. Each episode talks about various topics and films, and we think you tune in and get a bunch of great recommendations of things to watch as a result of our chat, rather than just doing whatever the algorithm tells you. That's the sell pitch for the podcast. Now, physical media. Why do we talk about physical media? Why does it matter? Well, I think it matters because if you really care about a film, you need to own it. You can't rely on the streamers to make it available. You'd be surprised how many things just aren't there if you're looking for something specific. It won't necessarily be in the version, the director's cut, the extended edition that makes the film work properly. And it certainly won't look and sound its best in some compressed internet file being sent down the internet as opposed to on a lovely disc that you own on your shelf. Now, hopefully you're a convert to that, and that's why you've tuned in the first place. So I talk about one film per episode that I own, get into the details of it. Obviously, people that are watching this, they want to know about the video and the sound. Is this a good transfer, a good reproduction of the film that they love? I talk about that. There are probably people who do it in more sort of technical detail than I do, but I like to think I'll give you a good kind of view of that, you know, what it looks and sounds like. I also talk about my background with the film, why it matters to me, why I came to own it and love it. And then round it all up at the end by saying whether I think this is an essential purchase. Now, obviously, you'll need to make your own mind up about that, but I'm hoping what I talk about will help you with that. So today we're talking about Excalibur on Blu Ray. This is the 1981 sort of epic fantasy film directed by John Boorman. It's from a script he co-wrote with Roscoe Pallenberg, who was a frequent Boorman collaborator, although not always credited on the scripts he worked on. Boorman was famous initially for some hit films in the USA like Point Blank and Deliverance, although he's a British director. He unfortunately had a disastrous 1970s after Deliverance, which was a hit. He then did the wildly ambitious, over-ambitious Zardoz, and then the hated sequel to The Exorcist. And he went back to Ireland where he lived, feeling a little bit bruised, got back to what he knew and did Excalibur. This is a film he'd been trying to make for over a decade. The cast features people who I don't think were all that well known when the film came out. Some of them are more well known now. You've got Nigel Terry as King Arthur, Nicol Williamson as Merlin, Helen Mirren as Morgana. You've got a bunch of actors more recognisable then than now, I think. Nicholas Clay, Sheri Lungi, Robert Addy, Clive Swift. Supporting roles for Corinne Redgrave and a pre-Star Trek Patrick Stewart. And some early roles for Irish actors who went on to be pretty big names like Liam Neeson, Gabriel Byrne, Kieran Hines. Cinematography was by Alex Thompson, who had an incredibly varied career. He started as a camera operator for David Lean Films and then for Nick Rogue, himself a talented former cinematographer, so he learnt from the best. The different films he worked on make for an absolutely wild list. There are some that make sense after he did Excalibur, like Ridley Scott's Legend and Michael Mann's The Keep, not to mention Jim Henson's Labyrinth. But you also have this random range of films and filmmakers that he worked with: David Fincher's Alien 3, the Schwarzenegger film Raw Deal, Executive Decision, Demolition Man, the Branagh version of Hamlet, and the one that jumped out at me for, I guess, completely random reasons, the 70s soft porn film Rosie Dixon Night Nurse. So certainly this guy's a versatile cinematographer, let's put it that way. As far as sound goes, the people in charge of the team were Ron Davis and Pat Brennan. As usual, there's always more people in the team than that, but those are the leading names. The score is by Trevor Jones, who was making his debut as a composer for films. He's also known for various scores like Michael Mann's Last of the Mohicans, Time Bandits, Angel Heart and Mississippi Burning. He also, interestingly, scored a TV miniseries of Arthurian legend with Sam Neill as the titular Merlin. Excalibur was his debut film, as I said, and I think he provided most of the score in terms of the cues and key moments, but the most famous music featured in the film would be the classical pieces that he uses to great effect, I think, like Karl Orff's Carmina Burana and excerpts from Wagner's Tristan and Isolde and Parsifal. But it's all of a piece, that music, and Trevor Jones was the man in charge. In terms of awards and nominations, I don't think it got as many awards as it deserved, in my view. I don't think films like this were very well served by awards, and in some cases still aren't these days. It had a total of 12 nominations, around the world, all possible kind of categories and ceremonies. The biggest being a nomination for the Palme d'Or at Cannes and an Oscar nomination for cinematography. So the craft was recognised. At the genre-specific Saturn Awards, it got 6 nominations, but only one for costume design. It lost out for Best Fantasy Film to Raiders of the Lost Ark. So that's where it was in terms of awards. It's got a big reputation now, I think, especially among people who remember it from the time, but not hugely awarded when it came out. Quick summary of what the film's about. No big surprise. You would have guessed it's about the legends of King Arthur, the wizard Merlin. It's the Knights of the Round Table, quests, Guinevere and Lancelot, the rise and fall of the great mythical kingdom that Arthur brought together, the magical sword Excalibur, which makes the title of the film. It's based primarily on Malory's Morte d'Arthur, which is hundreds of years old and was itself a reinterpretation of previous versions of Arthurian legend, including the stories of Geoffrey of Monmouth, which could only be an old-timey name, right? Now, King Arthur and those various stories are one of the most adapted and filmed sets of stories of all time. There are so many different tellings in so many different media, including film. John Boorman decided to make the most epic version that he could, and it's reminiscent of Shakespearean tragedy and the Greek myths and the Norse Viking legends as well. This version of the Arthur legend, it stays quite close to the main story, although it drops Galahad and gives some of his storyline to Percival. If you're a King Arthur head, you'd notice that. By way of a synopsis of the overall storyline, Uther Pendragon is Merlin's protege, wielding Excalibur and vying to be the king that unites the realm and forms into one kingdom. This is sometime in the Dark Ages after the end of Roman rule in Britain. On the brink of achieving his aim, his lust for the Duke of Cornwall's wife, Igraine, makes him demand Merlin use his sorcery to possess her. Merlin sees a future where Uther is not the one because of his giving into his lustful urges, but his heirs could be the ones. So he lets Uther fulfill his desires in return for taking the resulting child. The land rebels against Uther for his treachery, he's overthrown, and his dying act is to drive the blade of Excalibur into a stone so no one else can have it. Years later, young Arthur does not realise he is the son of Uther Pendragon and acts as a squire to his adopted brother. He's a humble, slightly bumbling character at the beginning. Almost by accident, he lifts the sword from the stone, Excalibur, proving he's the true king. And his innate goodness and humility combined with his bravery makes all the land turn to him, and he becomes king, unites the land. He has all the great knights by his side at the Round Table, including all the famous names like Lancelot and Gawain. But trouble rears its head in the form of Lancelot falling in love with Arthur's wife, Guinevere, and Arthur's half-sister Morgana arrives in the story, and she's a sorceress bent on revenge for the way Uther and Merlin betrayed her mother. So a grand epic ensues of battles, exciting scenes of knights on horseback as classical music plays over the top, Camelot, bravery, adultery, quest for the Holy Grail, downfall, bloody revenge, Helen Mirren being seductive, and farcical aquatic ceremonies involving watery bints throwing swords at people to confer executive power. It's full of great deeds, of heroes who dream of a better world despite their fatal flaws. It's timeless. I've got goosebumps just thinking about it. John Boorman started talking about doing the King Arthur legend on film at the start of the 70s when he started to make it as a director, but the studio, or one of the studios, had just acquired the rights to make Lord of the Rings and wanted him to do that instead. That fell through. It wasn't achievable at the time. And out of that, he tried to make a science fiction film, Zardoz, with lots of ideas of his own creation, but that didn't work out. After a couple more bruising experiences in Hollywood, he retreated back to this side of the Atlantic. He was living in Ireland. He felt that was where he wanted to be. It's also a great location for shooting stuff like this. And he went back to his original idea to make a King Arthur film, proving it's what he should have done all along. So you get this big, epic, operatic version of the King Arthur legend. So my background with the film, I was aware of this film when I was a kid during the home video boom of the 80s, but I didn't get to watch it while my mum and dad were in control of what I was allowed to rent from the video shop. Its lurid cover promised sex, violence and Helen Mirren in a way that they didn't think I was ready for. And they might have been right. I feel like I must have seen it, or parts of it anyway, on TV or video sometime before the end of the 80s, but my first clear memory of seeing the film properly is from 1994. I know it's that date because I had to look it up. It was shown on BBC Two as part of the brilliant Moviedrome series where Alex Cox and later Mark Cousins would present cult classics with a witty and informative intro before the film got shown. And Excalibur was one of the films in that series that year. Watched it, sat down, little intro from Alex Cox got me right in the mood, and it completely blew me away. This film fully leans into the mythic tone of the original stories, with no attempt at modern or postmodern undercutting of the legend. Things like Lancelot du Lac and some of the other, late 20th century versions of King Arthur perhaps didn't quite feel like they could do a magical story of the Knights of the Round Table in the same way, but this is not Boorman's way. He tells stories of characters that are flawed and human, sure, but they're heroes and they're larger than life. And there's a reason their deeds and stories have been told and retold for over 1,000 years. Boorman wanted to retain the excitement and magic, and he sure does. It treads an incredibly fine line to do this, because King Arthur and Knights of the Round Table have been portrayed so often. It's become the basis of so many tropes and cliches in books, films, everything else you care to name. This film only comes 6 years after Monty Python absolutely skewered the King Arthur legend with coconut halves instead of horses, killer rabbits, and jaunty musical production numbers about eating ham and jam and Spamalot. And Mark Twain was writing comedic riffs on this legend as far back as the 19th century, so surely it's too late for this kind of fully serious, kind of weighty version of the story. But John Boorman is not a man who holds back when he makes his films, so he, his composer, his camera team, and his cast give it their all with grand speeches and suits of armour, sorcery, a mostly serious tone apart from some great eccentric line deliveries from Nicol Williamson as Merlin, and just an unshaking belief in the power of the King Arthur legend. It's Shakespearean, it's operatic, especially Wagner. It taps into the great myths and mysticism of Britain and Ireland. It gives us great giant characters on a par with the heroes and villains of Norse and Greek mythology. And I love anything which leans into the old magic of the British Isles. Like there was a TV show on British television in the 80s called Robin of Sherwood, which did something similar in terms of tapping into that old kind of mystic druid, early British, early Irish, times. And this works because this is one of the greatest legends ever written, and it deserves a mythic treatment. Don't forget that even Monty Python loved the original stories. Sure, you're watching Excalibur, and you're never far away from remembering Monty Python when you're watching this. The lady of the lake lifts the sword from the water, and you're thinking of Michael Palin arguing that strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government, Arthur rides through the countryside, and you're tempted to quote, "He must be a king, he hasn't got shit all over him." But look at something like The Fisher King, Terry Gilliam's love letter to the enduring power of these stories and his own quest for filmic holy grails. There's something about King Arthur which grips you and doesn't let go. And this film reaches into all of that. It's magical. And in my humble opinion, it is clearly the best screen version of the King Arthur stories. So it was always something that I would want to own on disc. And I got a digital copy because that was all I could find really. And I had to shop around for a Blu Ray. There's no 4K at this point, and a Blu Ray isn't that easy to get hold of. When I was looking and shopping for this, I eventually found a Region B compatible Italian edition of the film, which was on Blu Ray and had English audio and subtitles. So the disc itself is pretty basic. I don't think it's had the TLC a disc release of this type fully deserves. It's only got the one Blu-ray sort of disc in the box. There's hardly any extras apart from Boorman's original commentary. The packaging is not helped by some twat putting a sticker over the technical information of the film. So I wanted to be absolutely certain whether this is 5.1 sound or mono, and it's kind of a bit thrown in. But on the actual disc itself, this is from the 2011 Blu-ray transfer, which is handled by Warner. And while it's not a full remaster and restoration of the original, you do get a proper Blu-ray of the film. There are rumours that Warner's going to be doing a 4K, and I am looking out for that. I would love to see it get a full restoration remaster, get hold of a negative and really do it full justice. When you look online, there is a lot of discussion about how that would go, because this film has lots of soft focus, filters over the lenses, partly for the visual style Boorman was aiming for, really kind of dreamy and mystical. But also I think he was trying to make sure that, in the pre-CGI era, the visual effects would look all right. It wouldn't sort of stand out as being too cheesy. So some people are saying, well, you get to 4K, how much more detail are you going to have to actually work from? I don't know. There's also some debate about the aspect ratio, which some say was 166:1. It says 185:1 on the disc, but the people I read who told me about this disc said 178:1. So the aspect ratio is might have been a bit truncated. And also there was a problem with the stereo mix on its original release, and Boorman reverted to mono. So I'm not sure who presided over the 5:1 mix that's on this disc. So it's kind of the actual film itself is a proper Blu-ray and everything, but I am a little bit disappointed that this hasn't had a proper disc release before now. Let me put it that way. And it's a pretty basic Blu-ray that I got sent me in the post once I clicked on the order button. As for the video, this film was shot on 35mm Technicolor with spherical Canon and Cooke Optics lenses. This was the pre-digital era, but it's good quality film celluloid that it was shot on. There's lots of location shooting in Ireland, which is, look, I'm sure round the corner from where Boorman was filming, there was just some average Irish family living in a house, but where he points his camera, this whole place looks like a magical land. Lots of rich greens, night scenes including battles and flames and fire, but also, sunlight, very vivid and colourful sets with magic, mist, and incredibly shiny suits of armour. So it's very, very vivid, pretty good to look at, I would say. I think it looks great, although it is a very soft focus film in the original, and the Blu-ray, I think, is a faithful reproduction of that. So it's quite soft focus. There's no real flaws. It's a definite upgrade from the old DVD. But you do feel like the video might have more to offer if someone did a full remaster by going back to the original negative and getting a 4K source. I compared it to the HD digital streaming version I bought on Amazon years ago. It's deeper and richer than that on Blu-ray, especially the scenes of night and fire. I don't think it's exceptional, but I think that's just because it's a non-restored, non-remastered digital transfer of a film that looks great but has some specific kind of approaches to filming that you can see, and it's very, very misty and soft focus on purpose. Now, this is not meant to be any criticism of the people who made the movie or did this transfer, because it looks like it's supposed to. The colour schemes that Boorman uses to tell the story are faithfully reproduced, and they are important. The dark times of the Dark Ages when Uther Pendragon is, breaking all the rules and causing his own downfall and committing all the crimes that come back to haunt everyone. That's dark and muddy, but it's vivid and impressive still, the mist is very nicely detailed and everything, But then Arthur's Camelot and the good days when he unites the land are full of beautiful gleaming scenes. He's literally and figuratively brought the realm into the light, and it looks great when it's shining. There's Irish woodland where the knights ride out and flower petals fall on them and the sun shines down and Carmine Burana sort of blares out. Looks great. Really sort of impressive. But I think because the original film was impressive and the Blu-ray is just a good solid version of that. No complaints about the way it looks. As for the sound is interesting. It's not easy to be definitive about what the audio for this film should be, because it had some troubles going all the way back to 1981, the original release of this film. They prepared a stereo mix for the film's cinema release, which Boorman hated. It didn't turn out well at all. So he reverted to mono so that it would sound as good as he could get it when it was released. And all previous home video versions apparently used that mono mix, which I always thought sounded fine. So I don't think this 5:1 DTS mix that's on this disc I don't think Boorman sort of supervised it. I'm not sure if it did anything particular with the sound. I think it just took the mono mix that it had and tried to spread it well across a 5:1 sound mix. However, I do think this film sounds as good as it looks. There's lots of clanging weapons smashing into armour. The dialogue is clear as a bell. The music is... The music is great. The classical pieces are really great. It's got a really nicely sort of moody sort of, score of cues underneath that. And all the scenes of battle have all kinds of sounds, from hoofbeats to sword play, walls being pelted with siege weapons, groans and shouts of the fighters. And it's all there, and you can hear stuff when you're meant to. It's clear and it's well done. It is quite sort of heavily weighted to the front speaker, and again, that's because the audio that they're working with was mono, and I don't think it's had anyone kind of give it the full treatment. If this promised new version comes out, perhaps we'll get a remaster of the audio as well. Someone's going to stick some Atmos in and bring those sounds out, because the good audio is there. I think it just needs a bit more sort of technical wizardry to really bring it to life. But at no point was I thinking there was any kind of problem with the sound. I just think what you're talking about is, this is the film that we got at the time, and this is the sound that we've been given, which is a fair representation. So overall, Look, it's an absolutely amazing film. It's a bit bonkers, but I love it. It's wild and full of myth and legend, and it's got the full power of the King Arthur stories. As I said, I think it's the best film of Arthurian legends that I've ever seen, with, in my humble opinion, The Green Knight in second place, but that's a very different story. Boorman makes such a great comeback from the pummeling he took in the mid to late 70s on his previous two films. And to his eternal credit, he did not shy away from taking risks again, from being full of wild ideas. He wasn't afraid of being ridiculed. He really gives this the full serious treatment. This could have gone wrong. It could have had the wrong tone and being silly. But he manages it, and the end result is a truly grand and epic film. And if you love modern fantasy film and TV, from Lord of the Rings to Game of Thrones and all that kind of thing, there are two films that deserve your thanks for all that great stuff being possible. One of them is the Schwarzenegger Conan the Barbarian, which came out a year later, but the other, and most of all, is John Boorman's Excalibur. So, is it an essential purchase? I'm hesitating, but yes, I think it is. I mean, even after everything I said about being the disc and the transfer being a bit bare bones, the original sound was a bit tricky. This Blu-ray does get across what the film should look and sound like better than any other way of watching this film at this moment today. It's better than the older home video formats. Anything that, if it gets shown on TV, it will be, the slightly cut down TV reproduction of this 2011 Blu-ray that they did. And the streaming options aren't as good as this. So it is good. It's a Blu-ray. It's a full-on Blu-ray version of a film that looked and sounded amazing. It's got great, mythic, stylish, visuals and sound that are all in there. But I do think it's a bit of a compromise. It's a bit basic. It's what people were prepared to do. I don't know why Excalibur didn't get more treatment back then. I mean, it comes out 2011. Game of Thrones is at its height. Lord of the Rings has been great for a decade. The appetite for this kind of film is out there. So all of this equivocating, I think, is if this promised 4K Blu-ray gets done and it's a full restoration and remaster, and there's a Blu-ray and a 4K that comes out as a result of that, then what I've got here won't be an essential purchase. If you're really that determined, hold out for that. I don't know how long that's going to take. In mid-2025, that was announced as coming. Does that mean it's going to be here in a few months? Does that mean it's going to be a couple of years? I don't know. For me, until I'm sure there is going to be another version of that, this is an essential purchase because it's a great film and this is the best way to see it. And you really want to own it to be sure. So, kinda yes, let me say that. So that was Excalibur. I hope this review was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed reviewing it for you. Once again, if you enjoyed the show, please do check out Double Reel, and ways to find the podcast and our socials will be on the screen in a moment. And I hope to see you next time for more physical media chat right here on Maximum Disc. The Maximum Disc YouTube channel is brought to you by Double Reel, the monthly magazine podcast for the discerning film nerd. If you like our celebration of physical media, please check out the podcast for more chat about the films we love and hate.